Now with me in studio to break this down is Dan Perry, international affairs analyst. Over 200 rockets in a day, fires around the north. We're seeing targeted attacks from the IDF, but an increased response and even a wider geographical range from these rockets coming into Israel. How serious is the situation right now in the north?
It's obviously serious, but I can think of some other words as well, like outrageous and completely unacceptable. Hezbollah clearly doesn't feel deterred, and for Israel and Lebanon, there is a really tremendous challenge because Lebanon doesn't control Hezbollah, and therefore to attack Lebanese infrastructure, let's say, seems unfair because you're attacking a third party. On the other hand, doing that and really causing massive damage to Lebanon probably is the only way to deter Hezbollah. Now, the Americans completely oppose such a strategy, and you could argue it's completely immoral as well. And therefore, Israel faces quite a pickle. Simply attacking Hezbollah alone, which is all the Americans are willing to really agree to, probably will not deter them and will lead to a massive rocket barrage in central Israel. So the basic strategic equation is for Israel that Israel cannot accept the status quo that essentially brings normal life in the north to a standstill and is, as I say, an unacceptable outrage, having a terrorist militia controlled by Iran 2 feet across the border firing at you at will. On the other hand, Israel probably can't accept the risk of attacking Hezbollah, which would likely mean real destruction in central Israel. And when Israel responds to that, it could spark a regional war. So it really is quite a pickle, and it connects to the Gaza war, because ending the Gaza war probably is what would end the Hezbollah attacks. I fear Israel basically is playing checkers. They make one move, Israel makes another, and Israel's opponents are playing chess.
Right, and as a journalist who covers this, I keep getting asked wherever I go, is there going to be a war? Is there going to be a war with Hezbollah? Is this the next step? What's going to happen? And of course, we're looking at the IDF having focus right now on Gaza. What kind of timeline could we be looking at right now? I mean, in a couple of months, schools are opening again. We've got tens of thousands of Israelis from the north waiting to be able to go home. What are the scenarios that are most likely?
It's almost charming to see some Israelis still talking about the first week of September as some kind of deadline because schools start. That belongs to a normal world, October 6th world. We're living in a different universe right now, and I don't think that is a real deadline. The government actually right now is trying to sell the people on the idea that the war will last through the end of the year. And I think it's safe to say that as long as the war in Gaza lasts, Hezbollah will continue the low-grade but unacceptably impactful war in the north. The way to end what's happening in the north is to end the war in Gaza, and that requires a completely different strategy. As I say, it requires a version of chess, and that's not what the government's playing.
All right, Dan Perry, stay with me. Reports are coming in that the IDF Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, met with senior generals from several Arab countries in Manama, Bahrain, on Monday as part of a continuous military operation between Israel and its neighbors. Halevi reportedly met with top military officials from Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt, as well as a top U.S. general. Now, no official comment has been made from the IDF or the U.S. Central Command so far. Still with me in studio is international affairs analyst and former Europe and Middle East editor at the Associated Press, Dan Perry. Israeli and Arab military officials meeting at the highest level. How big of a deal is this?
Well, I mean, Bahrain is relatively new, but Israel and the moderate Arab leaderships have been meeting for some time, and I would say also are in alignment, and that's what this really reflects. At the end of the day, there's a story that some people may believe that the Arab world is up in arms about Israel's war with Hamas, and for sure there's popular anger at the destruction in Gaza, but in fact, the moderate Arab regimes, which are most of the regimes, most of the governments surrounding Israel, very much want Israel to succeed in removing Hamas from power in Gaza, and if at all possible, destroying Hamas utterly. They would have liked it to happen sooner. And I think the pressure on Israel, both from the moderate Arab regimes and also from the West and the US in particular, is given that they have failed to finish off Hamas in 8 months, given the fallout from the war on Israel itself, but also on other players in the world, given the fact that it endangers Biden's re-election campaign, there's going to be pressure, enormous pressure, for Israel to bring the war to an end one way or another. And that's not just external pressure, because it's also clear that the school of public opinion in Israel that says, all right, given this situation, we got to prioritize the hostages because they're going to die one by one in captivity, is growing.
All right, and staying on topic, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, speaking at a press conference in Doha just a short while ago, criticized Hamas's latest response to Israel's hostages for ceasefire deal proposal. Now, earlier today, Gaza's ruling Hamas terror group finally responded to the proposal, saying they had some amendments. But Israeli officials say that all these changes made the response basically a de facto rejection.
It should surprise and shock no one that a beast like Mr. Sinwar would actually take glee in it and see advantage to it. Again, without confirming the specifics of the reporting, it in general is certainly not uncharacteristic of the brutality that this man is capable of, and the willingness that he has shown himself able or capable of since the beginning of trying to advance his own agenda on the backs of and in the lives of innocent Palestinians living in Gaza.
The United Nations is accusing Israel of committing crimes against humanity during the war in Gaza, including the crime of extermination, murder, and gender persecution against Palestinian men and boys. The UN has long been critical of Israel. Not much news there, but Israel has taken quite a hit in its international standing during this war in Gaza. Does it matter? Should it matter? And what I'm asking is, what is most important for Israel? Is it to make sure that its enemies in the Middle East fear Israel, or that its allies in the West love Israel?
That's a great question. Obviously, you have both goals, and when you have more than one goal, you can't try to achieve a maximum success in any of them. You try to optimize. Now, I would say Israel has minimized its international standing through a series of mistakes, through very bad strategy, through weird and obstinate refusal to do public diplomacy, and through utter incompetence on a PR side. Nonetheless, its war in Gaza is just. It's failed to deliver that message, and I wouldn't view the failure as being proven by statements by the UN, various UN bodies, or even UN Secretary General, who really does seem out to lunch. The UN is guilty of crimes against logic and decency when it presents a false equivalence between supposed war crimes committed by Israel, that's basically trying to defend itself, perhaps in an ugly way, but that's its goal, versus crimes against humanity or war crimes committed by Hamas, who purposely went out to massacre and abuse civilians, as many as possible. And I mean, John Kirby is right when he focuses on the words of Yahya Sinwar. My only disagreement with him is that when he calls him a beast, that is a disservice to wildlife of all species. I mean, we're talking about a diabolical enemy, and of course, indeed, Israel doesn't really succeed in explaining to the world that when all these people are unfortunately killed in Gaza, the main culprit should be seen as Hamas, which not only views deaths as a necessary sacrifice, but in my view, seeks them as a weapon against Israel. We're talking about a demonic enemy, and the bigger picture lesson for Israel is that it's unfortunate that despite that nature of Hamas, they don't lose support among the Palestinian people at the rate at which Israel or
the international community
would like to see happen, which suggests two things. A level of brainwashing that has been successful to a degree that is really abysmal and sad. But B, that Israel's overall strategy vis-a-vis the Palestinians is simply not going to prosper. We're talking here about two populations that are not going to get along in the foreseeable future, and the right-wing side of Israel's refusal to enter a strategy that leads to partition is a recipe for permanent war. And And I can only hope that somehow out of this disaster since October 7th comes an awakening, not only on the Palestinian side, but also on the Israeli side.
A recipe for a permanent war that does not sound good. Dan Perry, International Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for being with us and coming with your input. We really, really appreciate it.